Life has a way of throwing unexpected surprises our way, and that can change everything. To those who kept in touch, I want you to know that I really do appreciate it. There never seems to be enough time to fully return the love you send my way. Seasons come and go, and so have I. If you are wondering why there's no time left, well, that's just how things are. No more time left for you. Now, imagine a typical family. I'm the father, Adam Carter, a 45-year-old man who's losing a bit of hair. I'm in reasonably good shape, although I could stand to drop about 10 pounds, and while I don't have six-pack abs, I'm doing all right. I prefer wearing contacts over glasses and, so far, still have no need for reading glasses. Then there's Michaela, my wife. She's 45 too, with a slight tummy and a nicely rounded figure, which I actually like. She's not stunningly beautiful or unattractive, just an average woman who wears glasses and insists on being called by her full name. Finally, we have our daughter, Allie. She's 21, a smart college senior who's put on a bit of weight since her days playing volleyball in high school. Allie is fiercely independent and outspoken when it comes to women's rights, though, ironically, she still depends on us in many ways. I'm the sole breadwinner, and money has been tight. I didn't want her weighed down by student loans, so she lives at home, but that doesn't stop Michaela or Allie from enjoying the finer things. I drive an old, beat-up F-150, while they both cruise around in luxury cars. Our house barely has any equity left since they financed their lifestyle through home equity loans. We live in a pretty typical suburban neighborhood, the kind where there's the occasional block party. We don't have strong connections with most of our neighbors, except for the family next door. Their daughter, Emma Davis, happens to be Allie's best friend. After Allie went off to college, I felt adrift. We had spent so much time together, and now there was this emptiness I couldn't fill. Even the volunteer work I had been doing didn't seem to help much. One evening, I turned to Michaela and asked her the question that had been weighing on me. "Michaela, are you happy?" She looked at me, puzzled, and asked, "Happy with what?" I clarified, "With your life. You've distanced yourself from me, and it feels like you've lost that spark you once had. I miss the time we used to spend with Allie. I guess I'm just feeling a bit bored. How about us? Is there something I'm doing wrong, or maybe not doing enough of for you?" Michaela gave me a reassuring answer, saying, "We're fine. I don't have any complaints. What's with all these questions?" I responded, "I just want to make sure you're happy." Then I added, "Maybe you could find a counselor, someone who could help you find a better balance or improve your mood." She paused for a moment and said, "I'm not sure. I'll think about it." With a slight chill in the air, I decided to let it go. But then, 2 weeks later, Michaela began seeing a life coach on a weekly basis. You might think I was hoping this would spice things up in our bedroom, but honestly, no. Our intimate life stayed the same, still following our routine of twice a week. Is that normal? I have no clue. I've never talked to anyone about what goes on in our bedroom, and I certainly don't go asking my friends for details about theirs. Ryan Miller and Lisa Taylor, our neighbors to the south, are in their 60s. Ryan Miller isn't exactly the most skilled when it comes to fixing things, and Lisa Taylor has a passion for baking, which admittedly has caused me to put on a few extra pounds. One afternoon, while I was helping Ryan Miller out by working on his sauna pump, I overheard something that caught my attention. They were talking about their sliding patio door, mentioning that it was making that familiar scratching sound again. Then it hit me. If Michaela wasn't back from visiting her mother, it must be Allie making that noise. I hadn't seen her in a while, so I decided to relax in the backyard gazebo. That's when I overheard Allie's conversation. I caught her saying, "He's inside somewhere. His car's still here." I couldn't believe what I heard next. Allie said, "God, Mom, you're so outdated. Why not give Jason Reed a try? Emma Davis says he's wild, and make sure you're satisfied. Maybe that's what you need to spice things up in the bedroom." I was floored. Michaela had been complaining to our daughter about our intimate life? That just didn't sit right with me. "I think you should really consider it," Allie continued. "Oh, and by the way, Dad said he's going hunting next weekend. I'll have Tom Walker invite Jason Reed over. Sure, he's a little scrawny, but he's totally into you. Emma Davis also said his size is perfect for some fun." My blood was boiling. My own daughter was trying to set Michaela up with Tom Walker's friend? Allie went on, "You don't have to do anything, but since you've never tried anything like that, maybe it's time to experiment with Jason Reed." I was absolutely furious. I sat there in silence, not because I was calm, but because I was so angry I could hardly think straight. My mind raced. The BCH and her daughter were actually scheming to destroy my marriage. What did I ever do to deserve this? Then I heard Allie's final words. "Okay. Well, let me know. Love you too. Bye-bye." I was fuming. It's a miracle I didn't hurt myself while working on that frustrating sauna pump. That entire week at home was miserable. I was so mad. I went out of my way to irritate Michaela and Allie. And you know what? It worked. I spent most of that week holed up in my office or tinkering out in the garage. I even took the time to sharpen and clean all my power tools. Despite everything, I didn't cancel my hunting trip. However, I made sure someone was keeping tabs on Michaela's activities while I was gone. The photos I received weren't exactly comforting. Allie, Tom Walker, and some skinny guy were seen entering the house around noon on Saturday. Then, around 2 o'clock, Allie and Tom Walker left, but the skinny guy stayed behind until 4. When I got back late on Sunday, Michaela was unusually affectionate, but I wasn't in the mood to reciprocate. There was no solid proof of anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I noticed Michaela was sitting in a peculiar way, legs crossed and leaning to her left more than usual, like she was uncomfortable. Later, in the kitchen, Allie did something that sealed their fate in my mind. She playfully slapped Michaela on the behind, and they both burst into giggles, followed by fake little coughs to cover it up. I felt a heavy weight settle on my chest. For a brief moment, I even wondered if the guys I had gone hunting with might have exposed me to something. I made the decision to sleep on the couch in the living room to steer clear of Michaela. When morning came, I announced that I was heading to the doctor due to a made-up illness, claiming I was having trouble breathing. My boss didn't bat an eye when I requested the day off. My plan was to pretend I had COVID, which would buy me some time to move forward with my exit strategy. With my accumulated sick leave and vacation days, I could take enough time off to make it to our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. Announcing a COVID diagnosis usually keeps people at a distance. Did I really have COVID? I couldn't say for sure. I was fully vaccinated and felt perfectly fine, but my heart was shattered, and I was eager to distance myself from 4 specific people while my lungs were still working well. I checked into an extended stay hotel. There was no reason for me to continue living like a pauper. When I let Michaela know I'd be out of quarantine in time for Christmas Eve, she actually seemed relieved. Michaela and Allie called me twice a day. To keep my plans under wraps, I remained polite but feigned fatigue to cut the conversations short. Instead, I spent my time scheming revenge and making necessary preparations, like updating my wills, beneficiaries, and emergency contacts. Apartment hunting was a challenge and really hammered home the finality of my decision to divorce Michaela and push Allie into the real world. When anger consumes you, all sorts of thoughts race through your mind. Most of those thoughts could easily land me in jail, which certainly didn't fit into my future plans. One idea I had, hiring an escort to catch Tom Walker in the act, came from a news story I had seen about a company doing just that to get rid of unwanted employees. It was a risky move that could backfire and hurt Allie, but in my mind, she deserved it. Meanwhile, our artificial tree twinkled with blinking red, white, and green lights, and the pine cones around it filled the air with a holiday scent. We gathered around the dining room table for our Christmas Eve tradition, one we had upheld for 23 years. The first 2 years were spent without Allie. Michaela had prepared a meal, which now lay in front of us. Usually, we would offer a short prayer of gratitude, but that wasn't happening this time. I stood up to say a few words, but it was not going to be a cheerful toast. I began by asking Tom Walker about Nicole Scott, and I could see his face drain of color. Allie turned her curious gaze toward him. She and Tom Walker had been together since high school, and it seemed like they were destined to be together for many more years. But things were about to take a different turn. Tom Walker stammered, insisting he didn't know anyone named Nicole Scott. I pushed him further, describing the raven-haired beauty with ruby lips who he had been with the previous Sunday night. Tom Walker looked as stunned as a deer caught in headlights. At that moment, he fell back on denial, claiming he couldn't remember the name, but his words lacked any real conviction. At this point, Tom Walker fell back on denial, insisting he couldn't remember the name, but there was no conviction in his words. I confronted him with an audio clip from my cell phone, where a voice could be heard saying, "OCK. Nicole Scott. You're awesome. Don't stop. God. I'm CM again." After stopping the recording, it was evident that the voice belonged to Tom Walker. Allie exploded in a fit of rage, accusing him of lying and demanding he leave. Before Tom Walker could even stand up, I positioned myself behind him and shoved him back into his chair. Together, Tom Walker and I blocked Allie from launching an attack. I instructed Michaela to take our daughter into the other room and help her calm down, explaining that Junior and I needed to have a serious talk. Michaela led Allie out of the dining room and into the kitchen, but it wasn't a quiet affair. Allie's stream of four-letter words echoed off the walls. It took only a few minutes to lay out for Tom Walker exactly how things were going to play out. I instructed him to warn Jason Reed to steer clear of me. Otherwise, Jason Reed would deeply regret his existence as a man. Tom Walker grasped his position and recognized the limited options he had from my perspective. A manila envelope moved between us, and Tom Walker reluctantly agreed to do one last thing for me. I called out to the kitchen, asking Michaela to return with Allie. They both looked taken aback, their faces a mix of shock and tears. "Let me explain how I got that recording, Tom Walker," I began. "Her name isn't Nicole Scott, and I don't even know her real name. She's an expensive escort, I should add. I hired her to seduce you and record the encounter. There's also a video if you're interested in watching it." Allie gasped, "Daddy, what the hell? You hired her?" I replied, "I did, sweetie. How does it feel to be betrayed? You know, like being stabbed in the back." Michaela made a small noise at my words, and Allie's eyes flickered toward her mother and then quickly away. Michaela made a small sound, and Allie's eyes flickered briefly toward her mother and then away again. Both women were in tears. "Tom Walker, do you have something to say?" I prompted, switching my cell phone camera to video mode. Tom Walker stood up, grabbed the folder in front of him, and turned to Michaela. "Jessica Moore, you've been served." As he handed the folder to her, I could see the color drain from her face. I wasn't sure if she would throw up or faint, but it seemed likely she would do one or the other once she regained her composure. The pine cones on the table couldn't compete with the weight of Tom Walker delivering divorce papers to Michaela. While Allie and Michaela consoled each other in the master bedroom, I took charge outside. Allie's Audi, an early graduation gift, was loaded onto a carrier and driven away. Everything from her car was unceremoniously dumped into a trash bag on the front porch. Michaela's BMW followed soon after. However, the difference was that Michaela's belongings were loaded into a 23-year-old sedan, a stark symbol of our 23 years of marriage. My lawyer reminded me that I still needed to provide transportation for Michaela. With our credit cards paid off and canceled, I also had to cancel both of Allie's cards since I was the cosigner. I took another shot of bourbon to steady my nerves. Our cell phones were canceled as well. I had to give Michaela a basic phone with limited talk time and text messages, while Allie received no such limitation and kept her iPhone with all the latest features. In the garage, I quickly planted a for sale sign in the front yard with a few swift blows of my hammer. I couldn't sell the house yet, since Michaela's name was still on the title, but I wanted her to understand what our future looked like. Instead of listening to the Christmas music playing in the living room near the tree, I retreated to the basement. Here's the revised version of the 14th part. Sitting in the dark was occasionally comforting, especially as I listened to the commotion above me. As they realized that none of their possessions were functioning, I was called some less-than-Christian names. Those insults were mild compared to the ones I had been shouting in my empty hotel room while preparing for this moment. "Trevor, we need to talk," was their rallying cry. They speculated that maybe I had gone for a walk, noting that my car was missing while theirs remained. They wondered if Dad had taken it, but he couldn't be driving both cars. They questioned the presence of an unfamiliar vehicle parked in front of the house. With their phones out of commission, they suspected I had canceled their service. Ultimately, they decided to go see if Lisa Taylor would let them use her phone. Com returned to the house, but that was a tactical mistake on their part. I locked the entry doors. Now they were out of the house, stranded without working phones or credit cards. Both had left their purses inside, leaving them without any form of identification. I felt no remorse as I shredded their driver's licenses. It might be petty, but I knew it would cause them discomfort as they tried to piece their lives back together. Refilling my shot glass, I switched on the television and watched a few minutes of a cheesy feel-good special. Our reality couldn't have been further from the heartwarming story unfolding on the screen. Sitting in silence felt like a better option. A commotion erupted at the front door when Michaela and Allie returned. It was then that Michaela's daughter, whom I no longer considered my own, noticed the contents of the trash bag on the porch. Allie shrieked, "Oh my God! This is everything I had in my car. Daddy got rid of my car." Michaela was skeptical, insisting, "He wouldn't do that. It's just not something he would do," Michaela insisted. "Well, Mom, maybe the reason your car is missing is that he sold it too," Allie replied, sounding frustrated. "I'll be so mad if he did. I love that car." With the doorbell ringing every couple of seconds, it was tough to catch all their conversations. Michaela was livid. "Trevor, open this door right now. It's freezing out here." I shouted back at them, "Well, Mitch, the keys to your new car are in the ignition. That orange and green Malibu parked in front of the house is your new set of wheels. All your belongings from your old car have been moved over. I've heard the heater takes a while to warm up, but it has a full tank of gas. Maybe you could call your friend St. Jason Reed and stay at his place. He probably still has a thing for you." One of them yelped, "Lock," while the other said, "He knows. Trevor, please let me explain." Michaela made a weak attempt to keep the conversation going. A few seconds of silence lingered before Michaela tried a softer tone. "Trevor, I know you can hear me. Please say something. Merry Christmas. You better leave, Mishy. And take that woman with you." Moments later, the old Malibu roared to life. It sounded like it needed a new muffler, but I wasn't surprised. The guy practically gave me the car just to get rid of it. I wasn't about to pay for any repairs. Without any fanfare, the two traders drove away from the house. It had been ages since I'd heard about anyone dying from carbon monoxide poisoning due to a faulty muffler. Maybe I'd get lucky, but probably not. About an hour later, I noticed my father-in-law's number lighting up my cell phone. We've never been particularly close, but we managed to tolerate each other. After considering whether to answer, I let it go to voicemail. "Hey Trevor, I've got a couple of upset women here. I thought you might be able to shed some light on the situation. Call me. By the way, Merry Christmas." I muted my cell phone and took a sip of some spiked eggnog. Gradually, I began to calm down from the adrenaline rush. The blinking lights of the artificial tree lulled me to sleep. The sun was shining brightly on this cold Christmas morning. All the dishes were still sitting on the dining room table, but the microwave did a great job of warming up my ham and cheesy potatoes. Ham and cheesy potatoes are always a good choice. There were gifts waiting to be opened, but Santa had left me nothing. Those presents under the tree were meant to be unwrapped after dinner. Had anyone even noticed? I hadn't given a single gift to any of them, nor had I opened theirs. Instead, I gathered my most cherished belongings, deliberately excluding any family photos. Any that I had found were now scattered on the ground. Michaela took a few days to track me down at my hotel. The sun had already set, and a biting breeze filled the air. I kept the latch on when I opened the door, half expecting yet another sales pitch for poinsettias to benefit a youth sports team. Instead, I was met by a pale-faced Michaela, stripped of her usual makeup and well-coiffed hair. "Trevor, please don't close the door," she pleaded. I didn't shut it as I replied, "What do you want, Mishy?" She asked if she could come in for a chance to explain.
No, y firmly responda.
"Please, Trevor, your neighbors don't need to hear this," she urged. What part of no don't you understand? I shot back. I'd be happy to explain, Michaela sighed. Okay. Let me start by saying how sorry I am. I can't explain my actions. What actions are you talking about? I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. Mishi, please, I urged again. Trevor, not out here. Let me come in and talk about it, she revealed softly, hinting at her connection with Jason Reed. Couldn't hold back. You had something with Jason Reed? Well, isn't that just rich? Her eyes widened in surprise as I continued. You didn't know? I suspected, she admitted. But now it's confirmed. Actions have consequences, I replied coldly. Wait, you were going to divorce me without any proof? She asked, disbelief evident in her voice. Guessed right, didn't I? Have you found an attorney yet? I pressed. I'm working on it, but we don't need a divorce. I'll do anything you want to save our marriage. A little late for that, I shot back. Why didn't you decide to do anything to save our marriage a month ago? I know why. It's because you're selfish and think you're above consequences. You thought you could do whatever you wanted without repercussions, didn't you? Tell me, was it just a day later? A week later? How many others have there been? Michaela recoiled at the venom in my voice. That was the only time. You have to believe me. One stupid decision shouldn't doom our marriage. I pressed. Which stupid decision are you referring to? Because I can count several. Planning to cheat might earn you a reprieve, but cheating is a deal-breaker. Hiding your infidelity ensured there would be no chance for reconciliation. But worst of all was involving our daughter. Your daughter. I want nothing to do with her anymore. This is all on you. If you had kept your bedroom matters private, she would have never been caught up in this. I hate you. Some of the neighbors were getting a kick out of the drama unfolding before them. Trevor, she pleaded. I'm sorry. How can I make this up to you? You can't, I said, my voice cold. I hope I'm better off without you. Maybe I will be, maybe I won't, but it's on my terms. Divorce your cheating self and move on. Understand? Please, Trevor. I know you're hurt and angry, but don't do anything drastic for a couple of weeks. It was just one afternoon. What can I do to convince you? I replied. Just leave and never bother me again. Now, if you'll excuse me, halftime is over, and the bowl game is starting again. Thanks for stopping by, not. I closed the door firmly. Michaela knocked softly, begging for another chance, but my noise-canceling headphones did their job. I have no idea how long she stayed there, but by morning, she was gone. 11 months later, I found myself sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, continuing our Christmas Eve tradition. Alone, by choice. I prepared a simple meal for myself, having finally learned the basics of cooking. They say you get stabbed in the back, but the truth is, it shattered my heart, ego, and confidence. My self-respect, however, remained intact. Many nights I wondered if I had overreacted, but I never once agreed with that thought. I had become disposable, so I left. Case closed. My time in the limbo of divorce left me feeling defeated. I was often irritable, and my boss had to reprimand me for snapping at coworkers more than once. As time passed, I found myself withdrawing from social life, becoming a recluse. My coworkers learned to keep their distance as I focused solely on doing my job well. I began skipping company parties, and although friends attempted to set me up on dates, I turned them down one by one until they eventually stopped calling altogether. My self-pity seemed never-ending. To cope, I took up running, which also served to deter people from approaching me. Between my new hobby and the necessity of cooking for myself, I needed to put on some weight since none of my old clothes fit anymore. Occasionally, a coworker would compliment my appearance, but those compliments rarely went beyond surface-level niceties. The divorce proceedings dragged on for 9 long months, but our house sold quickly. Rather than receiving monthly support, Michaela walked away with a substantial share of the sale proceeds. Allie and Tom Walker went their separate ways, with Tom Walker blaming me for setting him up with Nicole Scott. It was always someone else's fault, he claimed. I wasn't there with Nicole Scott, but he was, and he was weak like most men his age. A seductive woman can easily lead them astray. As for Allie, She bombarded me with angry voicemails, but I never returned her calls. Maybe someday I will, but I wouldn't bet on it. I neither received an invitation nor attended her graduation. The situation proved particularly challenging for Michaela, as she hadn't held a full-time job since our marriage. My attorney dragged out the financial matters as long as possible. Once the house finally sold, I repaid all the money owed. The court ruled that she should have been receiving spousal maintenance, and now her comfortable lifestyle was in shambles. The same was true for mine. During some of the attorney conferences, Michaela attempted to convince me that she had been incredibly foolish, but I remained stoic, which led to a few tears from her. Hate is a powerful emotion, and I found it increasingly difficult to control mine. 12 months later, I continued the Christmas Eve tradition in my apartment, but this time Zoe Anderson, a friend who had experienced a similar betrayal, joined me. No, we weren't in a romantic relationship. I wasn't ready for that yet. After we finished cleaning up the dishes, Zoe Anderson took my hand and led me to the center of the living room, where we swayed gently to the music. At times, I missed the warmth of a willing partner against me, but after about 10 songs, Zoe Anderson wiped away a tear and left. We were both damaged goods. Allie's tone in the voice messages she left about once a month began to change. She sounded more apologetic, but I never returned her calls. My mother accidentally let slip that Michaela had moved in with someone new. Surprisingly, my reaction was one of indifference. Gradually, I started making small talk with people again. Former coworkers avoided me, and new ones thought I was strange. Making friends proved challenging, but I managed to build a connection with Zoe Anderson, and we remained friends. In late January, I received a letter from Allie. I hesitated, contemplating whether to open it, but my curiosity ultimately won. Inside, I found a short note accompanied by a selfie. "Daddy, I'm sorry that I hurt you. As you can see in the picture, I'm pregnant. I was wondering if you could find it in your heart to include a grandchild in your life. If not, I completely understand. Love, Allie." The return address indicated she was living a few counties over, and there was no mention of a husband. As I stared at the picture, I felt a tug of conflicting emotions. I resented what she had done to my life, yet I had always dreamed of being a grandfather. It would take me a few weeks to gather my thoughts and respond. In the meantime, Zoe Anderson and I decided to part ways. We both recognized that we were there for each other only to lean on one another. She chose to move far away and start anew. With a few lingering hugs, Zoe Anderson departed from my life. To stave off the madness, I decided to take up pickleball at the recreation center. The game is similar to tennis but comes with its own set of rules. Eventually, I found myself playing with others of similar skill levels, which felt reminiscent of junior high school. During one match, I accidentally hit Claire Bennett, one of the players, and her friends couldn't resist teasing her, suggesting that I should kiss it to make it better. I playfully blew her some kisses in response, and as we were leaving, she asked if I could buy her a soft drink. She mentioned that I seemed very quiet and shy. We walked over to a nearby Jamba Juice, where our conversation continued to flow. Claire Bennett proved to be a great conversationalist, in stark contrast to my own hesitance. Eventually, she asked if I was seeing anyone. I admitted I wasn't and that I wasn't sure if I ever would again. Claire Bennett then inquired about my past relationship, asking, "Did she die or leave you?" I replied, "She cheated on me, and I either couldn't or wouldn't accept it. It's been a few years, and I suppose I'm still not over it." Claire Bennett then asked, "What about you? Are you dating anyone?" I replied, "No one." She looked surprised. "Really?" I elaborated, "I go on dates, but that's about it." "When was the last time you went on a date?" Claire Bennett shared, "Well, I haven't been on a proper date since we separated. I've had people over for dinner, but that's it." I inquired, "When did your marriage end?" She told me, "That was in December 26 months ago. Pretty sad, isn't it?" I reassured her, "Not really. When I was dumped for a younger woman, it took me a couple of years to regain the confidence to try again." As our conversation continued, I felt my palms growing sweaty. Claire Bennett noticed. Let's change the subject, I suggested. Why did you start playing pickleball? Claire Bennett explained. My self-pity was getting tiresome, so I thought I needed something new to do. I shared. That's how I got into it too. My friends convinced me, and I've really come to enjoy it. How about you? Claire Bennett asked. Yeah, I got a paddle, and playing has been helping me come out of my shell. Well, I have to run. See you tomorrow. I'm playing at 4 p.m. I replied, sure. It was nice chatting with you, Claire Bennett. She offered some encouragement. You too, Trevor. Hang in there. Things will only get better. That evening, feeling good enough about myself, I decided to respond to Allie. Allie, I'm willing to try. You and I may never be close, but I would like to at least meet my grandchild. Please let me know when the time is right. Under no circumstances will I be in the same room as your mother, Mr. Fruden. Based on the selfie, I estimated a May or June delivery date. I wasn't sure if Allie received my response since I hadn't received another letter from her. The next day at pickleball, Claire Bennett was quite flirtatious, as were a few other ladies. Felt exhilarating. After hitting a particularly good shot, Claire Bennett Ryan Millard, Trevor, you look really good in that shirt. I bet you look even better out of it. The women giggled as my face turned crimson. Funny you should say that, Claire Bennett, I replied, trying to keep the playful energy alive. I was just thinking you looked really good in those yoga pants. I bet you'd look even better out of them too. This elicited hysterical laughter from the group as Claire Bennett blushed bright red. Then, the ladies started chanting, "Take him off! Take him off! Take him off!" Feeling playful, I obliged and took my shirt off. Claire Bennett shook her head vigorously, wagging her finger at me as if I were in trouble. A few of the ladies whistled in approval. As I slipped my shirt back on, Claire Bennett mouthed, "You're terrible," directing her words at me with mock seriousness. I blew her a kiss, relishing the light-heartedness of the moment. After the games, there was some playful banter among the women, with one of them joking about how great she looked out of yoga pants. Claire Bennett patiently waited her turn to join in on the fun. I found myself engaged in a friendly conversation with Claire Bennett, and eventually, she asked if I would buy her a soft drink. I replied, "I was just about to ask you." Claire Bennett playfully responded, "Nice. Yoga pants, huh? Pretty proud of yourself, aren't you?" As we enjoyed our drinks, I mustered the courage to ask Claire Bennett out for dinner and a movie, my heart racing with the fear of rejection. Thankfully, she agreed. Having been out of the dating scene for over 27 years, I felt clueless, awkward, and scared at first. However, as time went on, I began to relax, and my former upbeat personality started to resurface. After several enjoyable dates, Claire Bennett suggested that I spend the night. One evening, she surprised me with a personal question. "Who were you thinking of when we were intimate?" I took a moment to pause and reflect. I wondered what she saw in a person like me before replying, "A mirror reflection." Our passionate connection deepened, and with each passing moment, we became more intimate. Eventually, Claire Bennett introduced me to her family and grandchildren. Initially, the encounter was a bit awkward, as they were understandably protective. However, as time went on, they gradually accepted me into their lives. In early June, as Claire Bennett cuddled up to me in bed, she suggested that we celebrate our closeness. As the moment grew more passionate, I began to understand what she meant. It was then that I shared the news that Ollie had given birth to a girl just 2 days prior. Our passions flared momentarily, but soon we made love, surrendering to the connection we had forged over time. The following day, I sent flowers to Ollie, wanting to acknowledge her new role as a mother. To my surprise, a day later, I received an overnight letter from her. In it, Ollie expressed her heartfelt apologies and her desire to reconnect with me. She reflected on the lessons I had tried to teach her and spoke about the changes she had undergone in her life. She also mentioned her daughter, Ava Thompson, and hinted at the possibility of us reuniting. I decided to share the letter with Claire Bennett, who found Ollie's words sincere. She asked me what my intentions were moving forward. I voiced my concern about how this would affect my relationship with her, and in response, I received a warm hug and a loving kiss. Claire Bennett emphasized the importance of letting go of the past so that our relationship could thrive. With Claire Bennett by my side, I gathered my courage and knocked on Allie's door, surprising her when she opened it. We exchanged affectionate cheek hugs before stepping into her apartment. I held little Ava Thompson in my arms, and to my delight, she didn't cry. Holding her reminded me just how tiny a baby's hands and feet are. During our visit, Claire Bennett brought up Allie's marital status, and Allie explained that Ava Thompson's father was hesitant to commit. Throughout the evening, Allie and I maintained a respectful distance, but there was an unspoken connection between us. Before we left, Claire Bennett encouraged me to express my feelings, prompting me to return to Allie's apartment. I wrapped her in a hug and told her that I still loved her. Fast forward 6 months and a few weeks later, I found myself hosting the traditional Christmas Eve dinner in my apartment, now accompanied by Claire Bennett, Ollie, and me holding little Ava Thompson. The atmosphere felt warmer than I could have imagined. I delivered the Christmas blessing, and we all gathered around the table to enjoy a festive meal, exchanging gifts amidst laughter and warmth. Later that evening, Claire Bennett and I spent the night at her house, signifying a significant shift in our relationship. 12 months later, we celebrated Christmas Eve at Claire Bennett's home, embracing the joy of the season together. Life had indeed moved forward, and I had discovered a deep sense of contentment in this new chapter of my life.